to all the audiences, the visitors, the promoters of RightEdge Solutions, a very happy New Year 22. And I also want to congratulate Ramesh, Shankar, Kishore for launching this. I think a lot has already been said in terms of being a right time and the right solution. I don't think I need to reiterate that the employability is such a big issue today, given the number of youngsters. See, we often call in India that India is a country which we proudly say is a youth country, with probably people 65% of the population being in a very low age, less than 35 years or so. And therefore, we say that's a demographic dividend that we kind of enjoy. There are two things I always say: a coin has two sides always. A demographic dividend is truly there, but the question is if they are not skillable and they are not employable, and if they have poor health, then it is a demographic disaster. That is what can happen potentially. And I think I used to say a lot more on the healthcare sector, because having worked in that sector, I also know if you look at some of the diseases that we are plagued in this country with, I think that's a big worry. And so the important thing for us to remember is that employability and good health, both I think have to go together for us to really harness the demographic dividend that we cherish and we proudly talk about. Coming specifically to the skill set, the importance of skills, I think a lot has been said. I'll try and give a little perspective from my own experience in work life in corporations that I have worked with, and how I have seen it help or the need for it as you evolve and grow in an organization from entry to exit. If I were to look back across my 4 decades of corporate career, why do I consider this as a very important aspect? Let me just give you some perspective today. I mean, we talked about some of the well-qualified people, even in this group and amongst the audience also. But if you are sitting in an organization and hiring, let us say that we have to hire an engineer, or we have to hire a finance person or a salesperson, coming from same alma mater, with excellent credentials, perhaps top rank holders. How do you really differentiate? How do you really pick what is appropriate and what is suitable? When I attended the interview in Hindustan Lever almost, I think, 3.5, 4 decades ago, we were sitting on a round table, and before the group discussions began, at that point of time, the person who was the head of HR as well as finance were in the room, made a comment which still echoes and resonates in my mind even today. He said, there are certain people in this room, the people in this room, in our assessment, you're all equally good. At the end of the day, some of you will make it, some of you won't make it. Those who make it doesn't mean that you are better than the others. And those who didn't make it doesn't mean you're worse than the others. So what's the logic? He says, very simple. We have some needs, you have some traits. It is a matching of our needs with your traits that determines who gets into the company. That's where the real skill sets comes in. When you're looking at, let's say you're hiring an engineer, for instance, even in a software company or a hardware company, question is, you may have 3 candidates equally good. But what you really will determine what skill sets that person brings on board, that is important and mission critical to the organization, will determine who gets selected. Not the academic qualification, the rank holding, or the alma mater they come from. That's the most important thing. And I think that's what we need to remember. Just change gears. Look at it from a sports arena perspective. If you go to a T20 selection, who do you look at? One of the most important things you look at is an all-rounder in a T20. Why do you look at that? There are 20 overs to be played. If you don't know how to balance the specialist batsmen and bowlers, you want a winning combination, a person who can bowl well, bat well, field well, brings that skill set. Perhaps that in the T20, that becomes the most important thing. When you translate to a test match, the skill sets are different. The game is same, cricket. So that's the subtle difference that you need to understand. Let's go to another example in the corporate world. When you look at, for instance, as I said, you are hiring somebody in a purchasing department. People will say, what kind of profile do I need? Somebody will say, I need, I do a lot of chemical purchases. I do a lot of engineering goods. So I need somebody with a good engineering background. I defer. Because what you really is critical there is the negotiating skills, the ability to negotiate. I'm a chartered accountant. I don't know engineering, but I ran purchasing, and I was an edible oil buyer for 5 years in Hindustan Lever, heading that function. Now, I didn't come with that skill. Obviously, I got trained in that skill because I was not born with that skill. So the reason I'm giving you these examples is what really is an entry point in an organization, your qualifications. It gives you a door of entry. It will show you the door where you can go. Your certificates will take you thus far, no further. What will allow you to grow and scale the peak in the organization is the skill sets that you hone, that you develop, that you nurture, and that you really harness. And overarching in all these two is what I call the third aspect. That is the most important, your attitude. In any job, there are three things. Eventually, all of us assess. I get assessed. I assess people only on three metrics: knowledge, skills, and attitude. That's it. Attitude is overarching. If you don't have the right attitude, no matter what you may be God's gift to mankind, but if you don't have the right attitude, you may have fantastic skills. You won't make it. Classic example today. Cricket, what is happening? Why is Virat Kohli getting thrown out? You can look at it. It's perhaps attitude, right? I mean, I'm just being very crude, but this is the reality. This is what is happening today in the world. So the most important thing is that you have to understand all these three are important. One gets you probably the license to look at an organization, to be considered for a job, especially for the youngsters who are looking for an early entrant into your company, or even if you're an entrepreneur for that matter, because today is the age of startups. All of us want to be an entrepreneur ourselves. If you don't have the right attitude, a constant positive attitude, the only area where you shouldn't have a positive attitude or a positive result is you have COVID. Except COVID, everywhere it should be positive. If you have a positive attitude, you hone in the skills and, as I said, nurture them, align to the job or the area in which you operate, success is a derivative. It will happen to you. I think that's my biggest learning in life. You have to, the skill is so important. And unfortunately, most people don't get it. The one important aspect of the skill set, there are various skill sets you look at it. As I said, you could talk about negotiating skills, influencing skills, analytical skills, so on and so forth. And each could be aligned to the job that you are doing or the career that you choose. Again, here in my experience, and again, this is all my experience, they are not necessarily gospel's truth. Experience makes you wise, and that's why you share what you have learned. And that's why I'm sharing this. Very important, and I think somewhere Vijay Patsarthi alluded to this, is communication and presentation skills. If you ask me in my 40 years, what is one skill set that I would rate as the most important? I would rate this as the most important. Because in any place you go, even with, even at home, even with your children, how much time do you really spend? Your attention, your span of attention. You go to a doctor, a busy cardiologist or a radiologist. Span of attention is not more than 10 or 15 seconds, maybe 1 minute. If they spend 10 minutes time with you, 9 minutes is validating the conclusion they have made. That's what is happening in life. It's a very simple thing. Your ability to really, in the first few seconds, the impactful conversation that you can have, the ability to sell yourself. Don't forget, in any job, you're selling yourself end of the day. You're a commodity at that point of time, right? Your ability to market yourself or sell yourself will determine your success or failure. And you have a very limited span of time. You know, you all have heard of legendary Jack Welch. Welch had a person dedicated to prepare his presentations for investors and others. William Lane, you can Google and see it. Welch used to practice in front of a mirror before he went and spoke also. Imagine a man who was considered the CEO of the 20th century realize the skill of and he had one deficiency, if you guys know. He used to stammer. And for him, as an iconic CEO, stammering is a real deterrent. So if you had to demonstrate, if you had to overcome that and impress and make an impact wherever he speaks, he had to make good by constantly practicing and honing in on that skill, how you deliver the message, what message you deliver, what is the crispness with which you deliver, that makes a big difference. If it is good for a man like him, I don't think, we can say that that's not good enough for us, right? It's equally important for us. The other stuff is, in any organization, once you enter and you start growing, what becomes important again? Visibility. Because where you are and where the person who determines your career, the span of attention and the span of time or your face time that you get with that person will be very limited, invariably. In my career, for instance, a lot of my time that I spent with let's say, General Electric, I used to get probably once in a year, I used to meet Jeff Immelt, who was our super boss at that point of time. Immelt used to come one day in a year to India. I knew my career was determined on that particular day, that few hours of interaction that I had with him. Once in a quarter, maybe I had interaction with Azim. And Azim Premji's determined my career once in 3 months. I knew that was my time to make those impacts. So it's a lot of, you have to put your thought through, you have to work on those skill sets, and that's how you can succeed. So whether it's an entry point, whether it is sustainable growth that you want in the future, you need to be absolutely clear in terms of what skills you need to make that happen and work continuously on that. And I think RightEdge, if that is the area of focus that you're doing the right thing, providing the edge for those people with the qualification to make the difference between success and failure. And I can tell you the last piece, learning is equally important. The day anyone stops learning, you're a dinosaur. The day you stop learning, you're a dinosaur or you're in your graveyard. So never stop learning. And I think there's no time to say that I've learned everything. You have to continue, even if you develop certain skill sets, which has taken you thus far, to go to the next level, you need to hone in much more. You need to continue. It's a journey which has no destination. It's a continuous journey. I think that's the important thing. So suffice it to say, as I stated in the opening point, and many of you have reiterated, the importance of skills, as I said, honing, nurturing, continuously learning to improvising, that I think needs no reiteration. Have a very positive attitude, use your knowledge, dovetail these skills, then you can harness that to get what you want in your life, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're what I call an employee, you want to have a career in corporate life. This is what will determine. And practice on your communication and presentation skills. I will tell you, if some of you have the time, go and see the presentation that I was talking about. This guy's William Lane. There's a small tape that may be still available. How not to make a presentation